Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Night owls, what's the creepiest thing you've heard at night? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification button too. I had heard a loud noise come from the bed of my truck while driving 5 hours north. I thought I may have broken something in the rear end, so I pulled over. To find out, a drunk guy had crawled in the back of my truck and fallen asleep. He woke up 5 hours and 450 kilometers away from where he fell asleep. He used to live on the ground floor. At 2 a.m., some random crackhead knocked on my window and asked if I had 50 cents for a lighter. It should have been creepy, but I found the situation so absurd that I just laughed, gave him the 50 cents, and he was on his way. Not a night owl, but in my early 20s, I would hear a dragging sound just below my bedroom window between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., only on Sunday nights. But for weeks, it would wake me up, and at first I thought I was dreaming, as no sound would be heard. But as soon as I doze off, the sound would be heard again. If I got out of bed, turned the lights, and look outside, I would see nothing. After a few weeks, I resisted sleep, and nothing happened, but as soon as I would turn the light and sleep, the sound would wake me up. Eventually, I would let myself go to sleep, but be more alert, keep the window not completely shut, so that I can turn the backyard lights and peek through it faster. That was the plan for Sunday nights. I was prepared to try and catch the origin of the sound. It happens, I get up. As I turn the lights to look, I heard steps, running away but small and fast steps. This happened for a few weeks, only on Sunday nights. I talked with friends, girlfriend, everyone thought I was joking. I was starting to believe something was wrong with my head. Every week I would start with a bad night's sleep. Until one Monday morning, I realized that my faithful and loving dog, a Rottweiler, had his kennel door wide open. My mom started letting him roam the backyard at night, but only on Sundays, and without my knowledge, he would come sleep under my bedroom window. The dragging sound was him snoring, and the small feet sound was him checking out why did the backyard lights go off. I never did have a problem sleeping with him there. I still miss him to this day. All right, a creepy beginning, but a super wholesome ending. I like that. Just a good pupper trying to hang out with his buddy. I was lying in my bed reading. Suddenly, I hear loud footsteps right outside the window. Sounded like someone was wearing heavy boots and basically thumping their feet and past my windows. Here's the thing. I live on the 9th floor, top floor of my building. The terrace can't be accessed in the night. On the rare occasion that people do walk there at night, it sounds quite different. There's no place to walk outside my window because it's a 9th-floor drop. And that sound definitely came from beside me, not above. What turned out to be a bird trapped under a bathtub. It manifested as a terrible, loud screeching and banging that sounded like it was inside my bedroom wall and went on for about 15 minutes. I couldn't locate the cause and was ready to chalk it up to supernatural. My mother's house had a bathtub or shower that was molded as one unit. The exterior wall of the house had an access hatch for the plumbing underneath this. Some damn animal got in, raised hell, and briefly terrified me. Just the other day I heard a strange scraping noise on the wall from the hallway. It sounded like someone scraping their hand across it. I know for a fact that I locked up, so I casually walk out of the room to see what it is. Then there's a loud as F scrape, and something swings from out of the corner at my arm. After I finish climbing back into my skin, I see that it was just one of those decorative garlands we'd hung up. It had come loose and scraped across the wall, then came loose some more and swung out to greet me at the perfect/not perfect time. After a night out at the bars, some friends came back to my place to hang out. I got home first and went into the dark house where I had to walk into the living room to switch on a light. While I was struggling to turn the little knob on the lamp in the pitch dark of the corner of the room came this low, slow, wet mixture between a hack and an evil laugh. Like every evil character I've ever seen doing the evil laugh combined didn't compare to the bone-chilling, slow, guttural laugh that came from the absolutely dark corner of the room. Bitch, I broke the screen door off my front door running out of the house and just screaming like a banshee to my friends walking up to the house. I screamed, "There's someone in the house," over and over, and didn't understand why we all weren't running at that point, but I have a couple buddies who for some bizarre reason like to run to danger rather than from it, Well, long story in Reddit terms short, if I thought the monster in the corner was laughing hard when I ran out, you can imagine how hard he was laughing when my buddies run in with us behind them and click on the light in one try. And I live there and find our friend Steve rolling on the floor holding his belly from the pain he'd somehow got ahead of us. Then shimmy the sliding glass door open, I know down in the track, and then hid in the corner. It was just my good luck to be the first person inside to get to experience the sheer terror of a menacing laugh coming from a dark corner 5 feet away. That's the creepiest sound I've heard in the dark. I was reading a book on my couch. The edge of my couch is right by my front door, so about a foot away from the head I hear nails scratching along the door outside. And then there came this weird knocking, and I said, "Hello?" And the person on the other side, in a really high-pitched voice that was kind of quavery, said, "Hello, hello, hello." It ended up being a drunk neighbor who had fallen down drunk, peed his pants, and couldn't find his way home, and I didn't know that, though really scared me those first few minutes. I was sleeping in my parents' room because they were on vacation and my dog only sleeps in their bed. First floor, I might add. From a distance, I could hear screaming. Didn't think much of it. We have kids in the neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. 10 minutes later, the screams are louder and closer. Still didn't think much of it. Another 10 minutes and the screaming is louder and closer. My dog is now alert and huffing and growling. My heart is beating, but I still play it off knowing I've locked all the doors. My dog will go into fight mode and I have a gun in the cabinet. No joke, 10 minutes later, the screaming is right outside my window. That's right where my head is, and it's louder than anything. My dog is absolutely flipping out like I've never seen him before. I'm a pretty intimidating guy, and I'm having a panic attack and probably crying. I'm under the blanket, curled up in a ball, too scared to do anything. My dog won't stop barking, so I grew a pair and looked in the window. I saw no one. Minutes later, 5 police cars go into my neighborhood looking for an escaped psych patient. The scariest part is she had a knife and was hiding under my front porch steps. I was walking home at 2 a.m. when I was 16, coming back from a super cool underage party you may have heard of, Friday Night Magic, and I heard some loud banging and screeching across the street. A group of guys were trying to smash an ATM out of its foundation with hammers and a truck pulling on it. Really didn't want them to see me seeing them, so I bugged out. They got arrested. So I work nights, and I had to leave early one night because my wife heard tapping outside our bedroom window. We're on the front of the house, but it wasn't the front window. It was on the side by a fence. I go home, check everything out, find nothing. Come in, comfort the wife, lay down, wide awake because, again, I work nights. Maybe an hour later, wife's asleep. I see a shadow cross the front window toward the side of the house. Maybe a couple minutes later, tapping. I grab my flashlight and gun and run outside. Nothing. No more shadows. Intermittent tapping throughout the night, but never again. One time I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go for a walk at about 2 in the morning. At one point I heard footsteps following me. Turn around and I see nothing. Then I hear them again, accompanied by what sounds like a growl and raspy breath. It sounded just like a zombie from The Walking Dead. I turn around and still see nothing. But then I look down and there's a pug who somehow got out of its house and went on an adventure. She had her address on her collar, so I got her safely to her home. She was sweet. Once lost 2 nights' sleep after hearing several clunking noises around 3 a.m. When it happened again, the 3rd night, I happened to be in the kitchen. Mom used to have the Keurig turn on at 7 a.m. to be ready for her. Even though she hardly used it back then, after a power outage, she never reset its clock, so it was warming up at 3 a.m. in false confidence. Second, by clunking around the kitchen window, there was a raccoon climbing in the window trim, up one side across the top, and down the other side. Sat out on my patio in my apartment complex one night, heard a sharp bang not that far away. Neighbor shot himself. His wife found the body a few minutes later. She sat crying and trying to talk to him, pleading for him not to die because he had a daughter and he couldn't do this to them. She begged him not to be dead. She forgave him for cheating on her. She was trying to bargain with his dead body, saying they would go on vacation to a beach and see his family in Florida. The police and EMTs finally arrived and took both of them away. She never stopped talking to him like he was still alive. Working nights as an EMT. get dispatched to a call in a somewhat wooded suburban area. Round about 4:15 a.m., patient ends up refusing to go. Partner stays back to gather signatures and explain the refusal form. I go to load up the stretcher and kill the emergency lights. The road we sat on was wooded on one side and homes on the right, so I rolled the stretcher to the back door, climb in the cab, turn off the flashers, go round back to open the doors, load the stretcher. I shut the doors and I hear a twig snap in the woods, not thinking much of it, because animals, twigs, woods, Hear another quick snap a few seconds later, but immediately followed by what sounded like a very feminine giggle. Let out an audible nope, turned and headed back to the house to get my partner. I've lived in the city most of my life. A few years ago, me, 40, and my family move out to the country, like I can't see the next house country. One of our first nights, we're enjoying our new fire pit, and we hear this screaming coming from the woods next to us. We were ready to call the cops when my youngest daughter, 10, said, "Hey Dad, that's what the fox says." She was right. Looked it up. What does the fox say, you ask? Sounds like a teenage girl being brutally murdered in the woods. A high-pitched scream every time the knife plunges into her. It was one of the first semi-warm nights of spring, so I had my windows open. I heard a baby laugh and someone running around in circles around my house. My kids were terrified, so I put a leash on my two pit bulls, grabbed a bat, and put on my steel-toed work boots. They must have just left while I was getting myself together because there was nobody out there. A week later, my goddaughter asks me how I've been sleeping. It was her and her stupid father. Weird answer, but I have really bad tinnitus, so honestly when tinnitus suddenly stopped, and so did the insects, just quiet while walking my dog next to a really dark wooded area. Absolutely terrifying in a way that I didn't understand. I rushed home. Also, probably the sound of footsteps following me in the dark behind me while I walked to my dance lessons after sundown one evening. I was 13, and the guy behind me followed me for 4 blocks in complete darkness. I threw a brick at his direction and booked it across a busy street and didn't look back. Middle of the night, partner asleep, dog in the kitchen downstairs, suddenly can hear microwave working. What the F? Go downstairs, it is on. Out of reach of dog, only 2 people inside, so I turn it off. I reach second step back upstairs and can hear microwave programming itself again, right in front of me. Not a soul nearby downstairs but me and the dog. I turn, take the plug off the wall so it doesn't have any power to run. Left me shaken for a few hours. Okay, so my family home is in the middle of nowhere. To go home from a train station, I have to walk for almost an hour through a field, right next to a tree line of a semi-large forest. Lots of wild animals making animal noises. I'm also a night owl and a professional procrastinator, so if I'm going home for a weekend, you bet I'm taking the latest night train and walking home in the middle of the night. I've heard it all. Deer, stags, foxes. I'm kind of afraid of hogs, but I'm yet to encounter one. Deer calls are kinda eerie. They sound vaguely like human screams, and if I hear one at a certain point of the walk where I know the sound won't reach the human settling, I like to scream back just for the lulls. If there's a hunter waiting somewhere, he's going to have the creepiest experience. A deer call, and then, "Oolaga" from the other side, that kind of thing. TL, DR. I am the creepy sound in the forest, and I'm in a shouting match with a deer. You ever think about these stories and all these creepy bumps in the night, and you wonder if how many of them are caused by other humans just being ridiculous or think they're alone? Be a good topic. My encounter with a burglar. So it was a Ramadan night, and I usually stay up till morning. I was binge watching the Game of Thrones, and I had my headphones on. Luckily, one side was not working. Then I heard more like I felt a thud. I removed my headphones and put my ear to the door, complete silence. I thought it was some stray cats and went back to watching. 5 minutes later, I hear footsteps, and I thought it was my brother. He usually goes for midnight snacks. I called his name, no answer, while I was still hearing the footsteps. I called for him again, no answer. I said, "Hey, stop ignoring me and bring me some chips if you're in the kitchen." Still no answer. That's when I heard the front gate open, and I quickly jumped from my bed and opened my door, and there he was, a tall man wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans. My whole body froze. I was 20 years old, dude, and I always fantasize of beating up burglars if they ever break into my house. I couldn't do anything. In a small voice filled with fear, I shouted for my brother and said, "Thief!" He saw me, then bolted. My brother came out of his room with my sister-in-law, and my sister came out as well from the other room. I ran to the front gate, and there was no one. We looked around the house if someone else was hiding or anything was stolen. Luckily, nothing was stolen. Maya caught him when he was preparing his escape plan. Used to have a wind chime hanging in the corner of my bedroom. It was my mom's, and I just hung it there after she died. One night, I had a strange dream where I had being held down by some strange force and couldn't move and could barely breathe. When I did finally wake myself up, the wind chime was, moving and ringing. No breeze near it, no fan blowing on it. It had just started moving and ringing on its own at 4 a.m. Nobody else in the house. Once when I was younger, I slept in my basement for a couple of nights. On the first night, I woke up to the sound of a hammer slamming into the closet and underneath the bed I was laying in. I screamed and the pounding stopped momentarily. Then as soon as I was about to fall back asleep, the pounding started again, but also picked up speed. Once again, as soon as I started crying, the pounding stopped. The next night, I was a bit more reluctant, but I decided to suck it up and sleep down there again. The same thing happened. But this time, however, when I started screaming for the pounding to stop, it just increased until I couldn't hear myself crying and didn't stop until I ran upstairs. I slept on the kitchen floor that night. It was probably nothing, but scared the living shit out of me nonetheless. Does it count if I know what made the sound? When I was staying in student accommodation while at university, my roommate, who was male, snuck into my room late one night. I was still awake. I was curious what he was doing there, so I remained silent and pretended to be sleeping. He then lifted my blanket at the back to reveal my naked feet. I then heard him unzip his pants, and then I heard fap, fap, fap. After a while, a warm liquid fell on my feet, and my roommate wiped it off with a cloth. Oh, God. As a 19-year-old woman, I was too terrified to confront him about it, so I did nothing and pretended to be asleep the whole time. The next day, I had to pretend that everything was normal around him, but I packed a suitcase and left forever later that day. Oof. I was home alone one day, and I heard some bangs. I live at the ground floor, and the entry door for the building was broken, so it didn't lock. So anyway, I heard some bangs, and I thought they were fixing the lock on the door, so I didn't care. In like 10 to 15 minutes, the police are at my door. I think that's scary. To have the police at your door and not know why. I'm also a minor, etc. Anyway, turns out someone was trying to open my bedroom window. I was not in the bedroom when it happened, otherwise I would have done myself something. Thank you, neighbors who called the police. A few years back, when I still lived with my parents, me and my significant other had gone outside for a pre-bedtime smoke. It was about 2 to 3 a.m. The house is in a tiny village on the side of the valley surrounded by woods, so that alone in the dead of the night is a little unnerving. I'm used to hearing fox screams and other weird noises, but this night we heard a man bellow, "Arrgh." We were like, what the F? Then again 3 or 4 times. I was petrified. I wasn't close, but so loud and echoed, it could have come from anywhere considering how sound travels in the valley. But that was me, straight in the house, all doors and windows locked and shaking as my head raced over the scream as I tried to sleep. Nothing ever came of it. We still to this day have no idea what, where, or who it came from. Just one of many stories of living in the countryside. Not a sound, but it made me think of one time in my last apartment. I had a really vivid dream where I walked into my kitchen and 2 women dressed like it was the early 80s were cooking by the oven, each one side of it. And they were absolutely dripping in water or sweat. Their hair stuck to their faces, clothing dripping with water. When I came back into the room, they turned to me and asked me if I had seen the fire. I woke up quite scared and quite quickly. When I did, there was a slight smell of smoke within my room. Basically, I think the smell subconsciously influenced the dream in some sort of survival sense in case there was a fire, so my body would wake up. It was really odd. There was not a fire in the building, and the smoke smell soon passed, probably a neighbor drunk cooking or something, but it's always stuck with me. This happened to me like 10 years ago, but I still remember it vividly. Me and my cousin were house sitting literally in the middle of nowhere. It was a 1-story house built higher on the ground, surrounded by mountains. The clock was nearing 4 a.m., and we were just chatting and snacking in the kitchen when we heard a sound coming from right outside one of the 2 windows. It was the crunching of leaves, like someone or something heavy was stepping on them slowly. At first, we thought it was a wild animal searching for food, but then things got creepier when we heard another sound coming from the other window that overlooked the metal stairs that led up to the front door of the house. It was as if someone was climbing up them. Footsteps sounded too heavy for an animal. No one was supposed to be around the perimeter, so we froze in place, thinking it could be someone dangerous. My cousin wanted to take a look, but I stopped him, thinking whoever that was could have a gun. But he didn't listen to me, and looked anyway. There was no one. If someone was there and climbed down quickly, we definitely would have heard it. We were literally 1 to 2 meters away from the window. While we were trying to make sense of the situation, the sound picked up again. It was the crunching steps coming from the first window again. The window was above the counter, so I climbed to take a look. My cousin did the same too. We could still hear the steps because it was close. And then the scariest part came. The steps got closer and closer, eventually passing right under the window, but there was nothing in sight. Nothing. As if someone invisible walked right by us. Our heads just followed the sound. I froze in fear again, and my cousin must have been scared as well, because he pulled me back and closed the window. I turned my head around to ask him what the hell just happened, but when I looked at him, half his face was covered in blood. I think this was a coincidence that his nose started bleeding at that exact moment, but it was enough to scare us into going to a windowless room and staying awake until the sunrise. Was in my living room and playing Silent Hill 2 one weekend when my parents and brothers were gone. I want to say I was about 13 or 14 at the time, and that it must have been around 3 a.m. I paused the game to hit the bathroom when I started hearing a noise, like tapping on glass. Initially, while still in the bathroom, I chalked it up to audio from the game, until I remembered that the menu is completely silent unless scrolling through something. I get out of the bathroom, and the tapping noise seems to be coming from my little brother's bedroom window. Having grabbed a flashlight from the hallway, I opened the blinds only to see one of my younger brother's friends. He was trying to get my brother's attention after running away from home for getting grounded for stupid shit. His parents would try and ground him for all kinds of stupid reasons. Anyway, I let him in because, well, figured it was safer for him inside than outside. Told him I'd call his parents in the morning. Anyway, turned off the game and fell asleep in the living room. At 5 a.m., the parents of the kids showed up and figured the best course of action was to start kicking the front door while shouting to wake us up. Well, at first I'm like, well, he's playing a horror video game, so he's probably sensitive to a little bit of fright. Turning out to be a real person is comfort, sort of, in that weird setting. But then having the parents kick in the door, pretty wild night. I live in the woods. For context, my mother lives across the street, but besides that, no neighbors or people for miles. It's 13 miles out to the gas station and 26 to town. Woods. So one night, I'm sitting on my couch. It's about 8 p.m. and my son had fallen asleep early in a giant pillow and blanket nest he made out of the couch, so I decided to play a game, Skyrim, if anyone cares. I'm enjoying my mommy alone time, getting into the game and just generally having a good time, when I hear my pit bull, Aries, bark outside. Just one bark. It's a thing he does when he's ready to come in. Just one woof. Hey mom, you left me out here, back at the back door. But I'm mid-quest. It's not late. It's a beautiful evening out, so I ignore him. I haven't said, "You're fine," out loud and continued to play. He keeps doing it, just one bark, about every 15 to 20 minutes. And now I'm getting annoyed because every time he does it, rips me out of my concentration and ruins my immersion in the game that I rarely get to sit down and enjoy. So now I'm purposefully ignoring him. I'm like, if I wanted to let you in, I would have already. Now it's almost 10 p.m. and I'm getting fully annoyed because he keeps doing it. And besides startling the shit out of me when I'm concentrating, I keep getting the guilty urge, well, if you'd let him in, he'd stop. And I'm having trouble concentrating because I'm just waiting on him to do it again. And he does. That one loud, imperative bark. Hey, you forgot me, Mom. And I finally lose my temper, pause the game, and toss the controller into the blanket pile that's my son next to me. And it hits someone, and I hear a doggy snore. I move the blankets, and there's Aries, sound asleep. When I say fear like I've never felt washed over me, I mean it. It was dark and ancient, and it felt like a caveman huddled round a fire, small and vulnerable. A voice in my head that sounded like my grandmother, but also me, said, "If you open that door, you're dead. Don't take one step. Ignore it, and it will go away." So I picked up my controller and forced myself to keep going. The barks came 3 or 4 more times, and every time I'd look at Aries and go, nope, not moving. Around midnight, the house felt normal again, like a weight had been lifted, and I went to sleep. But that's the scariest thing I've experienced as both a night owl and living in the woods. Some explainers. Any pet owner can tell you we know our animals. It wasn't a dog barking, it was my dog barking. And the only other pet around are my mom's, who are in the house by 7 p.m. every night, and I can't hear them bark unless I'm outside any other time anyway. They're not that close. I also have 2 wiener dogs who did not react to the barking in any way, which is suspicious as hell for weenies. Aries didn't react to the sound either, making me think only I could hear it because he's very protective. My backyard is fenced in, meaning even if a strange dog wandered up, they wouldn't be at the back door.